I'm a designer. And when we design things for people, guess what? We have to know about people. We have to make things that people can use, can understand. That means that we have to know the audience. And it also means we have to test our stuff. So it isn't enough to say, oh, I have this neat idea. I'm going to make a new coffee maker or a new cell phone or a new whatever and bring it out in the market if people can't use it. So how do we know if people can use it? We try it out. A design is like writing. And writing is like design. It is understanding your audience. I do a lot of writing. I do a lot of speaking. And the most important thing is to understand who you're talking to and to talk to them. Talk to them even though you're writing it down. So I'll give you some hints. Quite often when you're writing, it's just really hard to express yourself. Really hard. You write these complicated things, and even you know it's bad. So how do you do better? How do you manage it? And so I have a little trick, is I keep trying to write it, and it never works right. And I get exasperated, and I jump up. And then I say, damn it, this is what I'm trying to say, and I yell it out. I stand up and I say it. And that almost always is the best way to say it. So then I run back to my keyboard and type it down. Because, when you write, and you write these long paragraphs, and then you say in other words, and you say it again, usually the in other words is the perfect thing. And so just throw away all the other crap. It's really important in writing to have a good editor. The good editor can be anybody. It can be a friend, it can be a spouse, but it has to be somebody who will tell you the truth, who will tell you this is crap, or will tell you, hey, you repeated that 3 times, or this sentence makes no sense, or this is wonderful, but why is it in the end? Why shouldn't it be in the beginning? I use my wife. So my wife is really good at taking my work and saying it's nonsense and restructuring it and making me do it right. But you can never read your own stuff and edit it. You need somebody else. And that's true as a designer too. If I design something for people to use, I can't look at it myself and say, oh yeah, it's easy to use, because I know too much about it. So I have to have other people. I give it to somebody else and say, let me see you try it. I'm not going to help you. You just make believe you're using it. Same with writing. You have to give it to somebody else and see if they understand it. So when you write, get a friend who will tell you the truth. Makes a big difference. All professional writers have editors. Even a newspaper journalist who does that for a living, there's always an editor who makes it better. Get yourself an editor. In writing, you gotta get people excited. You have to tell a story. There has to be a reason why somebody will read what you've written. And being logical is the way most of us think, and being logical often leads to the worst possible writing. Professors are like that. Professors say, how can you understand my course material unless you know the history, unless you know the fundamentals? And when you know all the history and the fundamentals, then we might give you an interesting problem or two. That's horrible. Why not give the people the interesting problem right away? First thing, make it exciting. And you don't understand it, do you have the fundamentals? Well, gee, if I got interested in the problem, then I really want to learn the fundamentals. But if you try to teach me the fundamentals first, it's dull and boring, and well, why am I learning this stuff? Same with writing. Don't tell people the history, and don't tell people why you're writing it, and don't tell people what's the matter with everybody else's stuff in the past. Pick what is your most exciting point that you want to make, and make that the first sentence. Lots of people try to save it for the last sentence, but you know what? No one gets there. They only get there if you get them excited. Look at a novel. Novels don't start at the beginning. They usually start in the middle. A shot rang out. What does that mean? I mean, the shot rang out. From where? What shot? What are you talking about? That's how you start a novel that gets people wanting to read the next sentence and the next and the next to find out what's happening. And after you've gotten sort of the basic going in the novel, then you can back up and you can tell people the history of the people and their, where they come from and how they're related to each other. But you can't start that way. It makes it dull and boring. And that's true of your writing. You want to make it exciting. So start with the exciting stuff. Let's talk about giving a talk. You've probably heard lots of talks, right? Lots of boring talks that you can barely sit through. Why are they boring? When you go to talks, you should listen to them for what you might learn, but you should also be observing them for how the person is giving the talk and try to figure out which ones excite you and which ones don't so you can make your own talks better. So there is PowerPoint. PowerPoint. We tend to hate PowerPoint talks. Why? Well, because people don't use PowerPoint right. I have a rule when I use PowerPoint slides, which is no words. What's great about PowerPoint is I can show you a picture, or I can show you an illustration, or a graph, or a diagram, but words, no. Look, there are three things that you need when you're giving a talk. One is your notes, so you can remember what you're going to say. Two is what you want the people in the audience to be looking at, to think about. And three is what they might want to go home with. The problem is many people use their talk slides to do all three things simultaneously, and that's bad. In fact, most people use their talk slides as their notes, which is why they have so many words, which is why they read the words to you. And you can read faster than they can speak. And so what are you left to the rest of the time? It's dull. So here's what I say. If you want notes, all right, put them on pieces of paper, 3x5 cards, and you can just glance at it. But better yet, practice the talk over and over and over again so you don't need the notes. Second, the slides should not detract from what you're saying. And if you have words in the slides, if they're reading the words, they can't hear your words. You can only attend to one stream of words at a time, either what the person is saying or what's on the screen. So take advantage of the fact it's visual to have visual images, pictures, diagrams. Sometimes what I have is I have slides that are black, nothing on them. And sometimes I put a word on it that says on purpose. So people don't complain that something's broken. They know it's supposed to be on purpose, so I can talk to you. For example, I'm not using slides now. I'm just talking to you. So in fact, I've now graduated to the point where I give lots of talks. And let me tell you, I get paid a lot of money to give a talk. And I don't use any visual aid. I just talk, like I'm doing to you right now. Nothing engages people better if you just look at them and you talk to them as if they're people. So the last point in giving a talk is always tell a story. There's a beginning, there's a goal, there's something exciting happening. Then there are the intermediate steps to get to that goal, and then there's the ending. You put an exciting start, your most exciting part of the talk, put that first. And then the middle is how you got there. And the ending is, again, summarizing the excitement. They start off excited. Then they're going to listen to the dull, boring stuff in the middle because, they want to know how it happened. And then at the end, you summarize. So they walk out with some excitement and remembering the important points. So the last part is, what do they walk out with? If you really want them to walk out with lots of material to think about, either you summarize it at the end or you give them handouts. They can take it and walk home, or you can mail it to them, or there can be a website you can tell them about and they can go to. Don't try to put it all on the slides. The slides' purpose is to show them material that you can't talk about, like a photograph, like a picture, like a diagram, like a graph. The rest, tell a story, get them excited, motivate them, and talk to them as if they were really people, your friends. Okay? Let's talk about finding a job. You know, when you apply for a job, you're supposed to submit your resume and maybe a portfolio of works. Now, there are many ways you can do this, and more people are sending in videos or websites and URLs and things to click on and YouTube and all that stuff. Clever and interesting and nice and maybe useful, but let's do a human-centered design approach. So let's try to understand the people who are hiring you. So we are preparing this for the people who are going to hire me, right? So let's see how they work. Problem 1. The person who is hiring doesn't have any time. I mean, that's why they're hiring you, right? They have all these jobs that need to be done. They don't have enough people, and so they're busy, and they need more people. So they request more people. And so one day on their desk is this stack of resumes and portfolios, you know, about that tall. So they have to go through it. And I've done this a lot. I've hired a lot of people. So let me tell you how it works. First of all, how much time do you think I'm going to spend on your material? You've carefully put it together. It may have taken you a week to put it together. How much time do you think I'm going to spend on it? 10 minutes? 5 minutes? 1 minute? Let's try 15 or 20 seconds. Because here's what I do. Remember, I'm really busy. And oh God, there's these pile, and I don't know. And there's a phone ringing, and there's somebody coming with questions, and I'm told I'm late for a meeting. So what I do is I look at the first one, and I look at it and put it in a pile, and I have 2 piles, which is no and look at later. So I'm going to spend about 15 or 20 seconds. No, no, no. Oh, look at it later. How do you get into the look at it later? You have to show that you're different. But not different in a weird way, different in an interesting way. What's going on here? Why does this look different? And remember this, you're applying for a job, and lots of other highly qualified people are applying for a job, and their resumes and your resume and their portfolio and your portfolio probably all look the same. You've all taken good courses, you've all done great work, you all have done all these volunteer activities, you all have done this, that, and the other. They all look the same. So how do you differentiate? Well, in the resume, there's a paragraph where you write what you're interested in. That's an important paragraph. That's what people look at. But don't say, I am a hard worker and industrial, and I am very much interested. Don't say these things because everybody says it. So you want to say something that makes you unique. I spent a week in Africa among the natives in Nairobi, trying to understand how we could get better sanitation when there's no electricity. That makes me wonder, oh, this is an interesting person. Now, what's that got to do with the job they're applying for? That's your next sentence. The point being, you want something that gets people's attention, that shows that you're a serious worker, but that you have other interests that actually might make you a deeper and richer and more inspiring worker. I remember I was looking at one person's portfolio. You know, a lot of the students do this. They put in their portfolio and their resume in the order in which they did the work. And the stuff that you do early on in your life is not the most important stuff. So what you want to do is take what you are most proud of and make that first in the resume and make that first in a portfolio. And all that other stuff that you had to do in your courses or that you did in a previous job, put that at the end. So they may never get to it, but it's sort of there just in case they finally you got put into the look at later pile, and now they're looking at it later, and they divide that into 2 piles, no and oh, yeah, maybe. And then that one gets looked at carefully. So that's what the stuff in the back is for. The stuff in the front is to show that you are different, but different in a way that makes you valuable to them. I was looking at a person's portfolio, and first of all, he didn't have his most exciting projects in the beginning. That was silly. But second of all, in the middle, there was this picture of a cow standing on the train tracks, stopping the train. And I said, what is this doing in here? And he, well, I was in India, he said, and I came across this, and I thought that was this really funny, kind of humorous juxtaposition of modern technology and standard farming practices in India. So it was just a wonderful picture. So what I recommended was that he make that the cover of his portfolio. And you know what? He got the job. So when you do your portfolio, think about the poor, overworked, time-pressured person who's reading it, who's trying to figure out the right person and has no time, and all the things they're looking for at look the same. So think about how you're going to stand out, not by being weird, but by being different, but in a way that seems relevant to the job. Okay? Many of you have to fill out these job application forms where you're supposed to give a URL. You're supposed to have a little website so that people can look at it and see why they should hire you. I'll tell you this, as someone hiring, I hate that, because when I get a bunch of pile of paper resumes and portfolios, well, I can go through each one in 5 or 10 seconds and say, no, 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 oh, look at it later, no, no, look at it later. When I get a URL, what a pain. I had to click on it and load it and then try to figure out what to do and read it. It takes me more time, which means I'm somewhat in a bad mood before I even start reading and watching what you've given me. So therefore, if you have to do this, you have no choice. Get me excited and interested immediately, so that you should have a photograph, an image that's interesting. Not of you necessarily, but of the work or something that you do that is different and exciting, and so I will look at it and say, oh, what is this? Gee, I don't understand. But it looks interesting. I'll spend time studying it. And if you want to do a video, same thing. Make the opening of that video something that's tantalizing. Don't say, my name is. Don't do that. Watch movies. Watch plays. They don't start by saying, my name is. Even where you have to introduce yourself, what you do is you start off with something really interesting, and then you back up later and say, my name is Don Norman, and I'm here to tell you that. But you get them going right away, because that's all you're going to get. Because let me tell you, I never watch the video all the way through, not unless it has captivated me from the first moment. Otherwise, I watch the first 5 or 10 seconds and say, okay, next. Or the same with a web page. I'm not going to read the whole thing unless you've captured my attention. I say, oh, there's something really interesting here. So the moral is always tell a story, whether you're writing, whether you're giving a talk, whether you're making a website, whether you're doing printed material. Tell a story where the opening sentence, opening image, opening part of the video is something that, oh, well, what's this? That's exciting. Got it? Good. You know, the most important thing you can do is engage your audience. Get them motivated, get them interested. How do you do that? Well, leave them hanging. Give them an opening sentence or story. Giving them something that makes them say, oh, that's interesting. I wonder how he did that. Or, oh, that's interesting. I wonder how she came across that. Or, oh, what? That doesn't make sense to me. And that makes them, well, it's an emotional state, actually. It's because emotions are heavily based on expectation. And they're saying, well, what's going on? I don't understand. What do I expect to come next? How is this person ever going to explain that? Well, once you've done that, you've won. You've got their attention. So you have to learn how to tell stories. Don't tell jokes, not unless you're a professional comedian and you're really good at it. People will start off with a joke. Come on, what's that about? Your stuff has to be relevant to the message you're giving. But you can do this by engaging them in something that's really interesting to them. Or maybe even if it's interesting to you, you can get them excited by what's interesting to you. I was watching a ball game the other day. You know what happened? No, I don't, but go on, tell me more. Or I was out eating dinner and I ordered this wonderful dish, but it came, I didn't even know how to eat it. Something that is understandable but unusual enough that I want to hear the rest. That's how you engage people. That's how you get the emotions involved, but in a nice, calm, positive way. You can't separate out emotions from life. Emotions are there all the time. And so once you get people interested, engaged, or expecting, the emotions are involved. And they are paying attention, and that's what you want, paying attention. I was told I had to tell you something about my background and why I think I'm a designer now. I didn't start off that way. I started off as a nerd. I went to MIT, majored in engineering. Was your typical MIT nerd. Didn't know how to talk to people, didn't know how to relate to people. People I thought were a nuisance. You know, my stuff would really work well if people weren't in the way. And I continued. And I got really interested in computers. And after I went to graduate school, and then I discovered psychology, and I realized that, psychology. Well, I'm trying to build computers, but the brain already exists, so maybe it'd be really just as interesting to study how the brain works, and because the brain is more powerful than any computer that we have. Even today, it's more powerful. So I started studying psychology, but again, I ignored people. I was trying to understand what I called the information processing mechanisms of the mind. And I had a really interesting career. I started off at the University of Pennsylvania. I started off at MIT, the University of Pennsylvania. My first job was at Harvard. And I was at Harvard for about 5 years, and then they started this campus in San Diego. And so I came in, a long time ago, to the newly founded University of California at San Diego campus before any student had even graduated. And I joined the psychology department. I was the second year of its existence, and started introducing science into psychology, the science of information processing, the field that today is called cognitive psychology, filled with computer modeling and mathematical modeling. But I still didn't do people. Well, years later, after I'd been studying things like how we remember things and how we learn things and how we make decisions, there was a major accident in the United States. There was a nuclear power accident called 3 Mile Island, and the operators couldn't figure out the problem, and so it took like 2 days before they figured out what was wrong, and by then the power plant almost had a major calamity, almost melted down. And in fact, the power plant has never recovered. It was shut down. And since that accident, there's been no nuclear power plants built in the United States. I was called in by the Nuclear Power Regulatory Committee to figure out why the operators couldn't figure it out. Well, me and my committee looked around, and we looked at the way that power plant was designed, and we said, those operators were pretty smart. They did a pretty good job. But the plant was so badly designed, if you wanted to design something to cause errors, you couldn't do a better job. And so suddenly it occurred to me, I have an engineering background and I have a psychology background, and gee, don't we build things for people? So isn't that the perfect combination? And that was a turning point in my life. So from that time, I started understanding, studying and building and understanding how to design things that people could use, that people wouldn't make errors, because it was designed to help them so they could understand it. And the other important part of my life was that I took a sabbatical leave, and I was in England, and I couldn't work the water faucets, and I couldn't work the light switches, and I couldn't even open doors. And I said, wait a minute, this is crazy. And I realized that some of the principles I was studying for aviation safety and for design of nuclear power plants and so on applied to everyday things like doors and light switches and water faucets, or taps as they're called in Britain. And so I wrote a book. It's really amazing. I wrote that book in like 2 months. It just came boom, right out. It was then called The Psychology of Everyday Things. And today it's called The Design of Everyday Things, about why you couldn't open doors. And that also changed my life. It changed my life so much, I became much more interested in the practical side of building things. And so eventually I left the university. I took an early retirement and I went off and went to Apple, which I thought was the best computer company. And I went to Apple and eventually became vice president of their advanced technology lab, and that was really exciting. And I've learned that working in industry is fantastic because you build things, but you know, the pressures are immense, so people don't have any time to think. You're always doing. And it's interesting, in the university, people hardly ever do anything, they're thinking. So one place, there's a lot of thinking and no doing, and the other place, a lot of doing and hardly any thinking. So I really love now going back and forth, because when I work in industry, I build things and people use them, and it's wonderful. But I don't get to think about it. And I go back to the university and I can think, well, what are the principles underlying that? So it's going back and forth. They're really valuable. And that's what I now do with my life. So I went off and I went to work in many companies. I had just started a new company to make a cooking appliance, and that's now in startup mode in San Francisco. And the chancellor of UC San Diego came to my home in Palo Alto and said, please come back to San Diego and start a design program, which is what I'm doing. And we're working closely with industry and with the professors on campus, and for that matter around the state, for that matter around the country, and for that matter around the world. And I'm having a ball. But my goal is to train people to think like designers so that they always think of the people they're designing for, or if you're a writer, the people you're writing for, if you're giving a talk, the people you're giving a talk to. Make things engaging and interesting and understandable. And that's kind of a brief history of how I got to where I am today. If you like what I'm talking about and you want to learn more, well, I've written lots of books. You can go to my website. How do you find my website? Well, my name is Don Norman. That should be enough. And the book, The Design of Everyday Things, is really pretty easy to read, and you can find it. Just search for Don Norman. And I even have a MOOC, a very simple MOOC. And you can do it in a few hours, and it gives you it's free, and you can do lots of interesting things, and you'll learn roughly the way I'm thinking, okay? So it's very easy to find out more about this. And what I like about The Design of Everyday Things is how people say it's changed their life. They now will walk around the world looking at things differently, and many people decided to change their profession as a result. Well, maybe that'll happen to you. Good luck.